Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mormon Stories. This is a live breaking news edition. Basically, we have just received word that a new amended complaint to the Tim Ballard harassment allegations is making what I think many feel are pretty scandalous allegations. The allegations include that Russell Ballard gave to Tim Ballard private Mormon wealthy tithing donor information to Tim Ballard so that he and OUR could fundraise off of wealthy Mormon tithing donors. It claims that Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes intimidated witnesses when people were trying to criticize or file complaints against Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad and or Sean Reyes. That's a pretty big deal. And then it shows pretty convincingly that Glenn Beck was trying to broker damage control between Mormon apostle Neil Andersen and Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes. It's really, really crazy, scandalous allegations that some are saying have the potential to be really significant. And all I'm going to do today is spend a little bit of time going through the complaint. If you want to see the amended complaint, you can actually find it in the description, either on Facebook or on YouTube. But what I want to do is just kind of read through it. Just for a little bit and give you all a sense of what's going on. And I'm just going to warn you, it's pretty outrageous. So here is the document that we're going to be talking about today. It is filed in the 3rd Judicial District Court, Salt Lake County, Salt Lake, Utah. It's being labeled the first amended complaint between 5 anonymous plaintiffs and Tim Ballard, Operation Underground Railroad, Liberty and Light, or the Spear Fund, the Rockwell Group, and the Nazarene Fund, and a bunch of other nonprofits that Tim Ballard is associated with, and Janet Russon, who's the psychic medium that channeled Nephi for Tim Ballard's jumps, and a bunch of other people whose names I don't totally recognize. And I'm just going to read kind of the stuff that's most significant here. I'm going to skip through. There's like 150 different counts, but I'm going to start. There's a section called Factual Allegations, and it starts with the quote, "One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We're no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back." So that's Carl Sagan, one of my favorite authors. He wrote The Demon Haunted World. And it's fun that they're starting the Factual Allegations with a Carl Sagan quote. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump in really quick. It starts out by talking about Tim Ballard, that he claimed to have worked for the CIA and Homeland Security, that he started Operation Underground Railroad, and automatically there's some scandalous stuff. 32 says Ballard founded the nonprofit corporation Light and Liberty, or the Spear Fund, as a landing spot for him after being fired by OUR. It operates as the alter ego of Tim Ballard. 33, the other corporate defendants were created by Ballard in order to funnel the donations coming into OUR into corporate profits and shareholder distributions. Later, it's going to talk about how much money Tim Ballard brought in, something over like $10 million, I think, in 1 year. We'll see for sure. It talks about Ballard being the CEO of most of these companies. It mentions other members of the OUR board, including Andersen, Blake, Mortensen, Pack, Reynolds, Fairbanks, Blake, and Damon. I don't know those people. It talks about OUR raising money And then on 38, it says many of these OPS included wealthy men with so it's talking about the ops. So it says OUR raised money in order to have conducted multiple sting operations to purportedly rescue trafficked women and children, or ops. Then it goes on to say many of these ops included wealthy men with no military training who wanted an experience vacation where they dropped into third world countries to rescue trafficked children with photo opportunities and stories in the local newspapers of their heroics, all the while flying first class. So we've talked about these ops in the past. They seem to be primarily bogus and excuses to visit strip clubs and prostitutes and to go to first class resorts and taking first class flights. 39, it says, while promotional and media materials made the ops appear to be paramilitary drop-ins to arrest traffickers and rescue children, what most ops consisted of was going to strip clubs and massage parlors across the world after flying first class to get there and staying at five-star hotels, on boats, and at VRBOs across the globe. 40 says these ops were a fundraising machine, that they were more show than substance, and the entire OUR enterprises were funded by donors for the ops, many of whom held bake sales and literally donated their widow's mite to OUR and Tim Ballard. Goes on to say Ballard, started getting fame of mythic proportions. It mentions that he was, count 43, he was appointed as a special advisor to Ivanka Trump in October of 2017, and it's got a photo of Ballard with Ivanka Trump, and there's Orrin Hatch right next to her. May he rest in peace. Ballard was invited by President Trump to join the White House Anti-Trafficking Advisory Board. And it says one of Ballard's closest friends is Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes, with Reyes promoting Ballard until just recently to be the next United States Senator from the state of Utah. And there's a photo of Tim Ballard and Sean Reyes hugging. It goes on to say, Reyes, according to his webpage, is the top law enforcement official in Utah charged with protecting consumers from those who abuse the law, again providing credibility to Ballard and OUR that was not warranted. Goes on 48, General Reyes has repeatedly vouched for OUR and Tim Ballard, even participating in an alleged op in Colombia, which was well publicized in Utah, giving Ballard the cover of the top law enforcement officer in the state of Utah to carry out his purposes, including the couple's ruse, which we're going to talk about later. Even while consumer complaints and criminal investigations were coming into his office regarding the improprieties of OUR and Ballard. I should say that I'm reading this document. I guess these are all allegations according to this document, but the document has multiple exhibits providing evidence. So I don't want to claim on Mormon Stories right now that anything I've said before or after this is factual or truth. Right now, it's at the level of allegations. 49, it says General Reyes gave undue credibility to OUR and Tim Ballard with foreign leaders. And there's a picture of Tim Ballard, Sean Reyes, and I'm assuming a foreign leader, and I don't know who that would be. It goes on to say, which we've covered before, complaints of fraud and sex abuse by OUR and Tim Ballard were coming into the Utah Attorney General's office, that's Sean Reyes, and it was determined that the Davis County Attorney's Office would conduct a criminal investigation of Tim Ballard and OUR, as the Attorney General of the state of Utah had a conflict of interest because of his involvement and support of Tim Ballard and OUR. So Sean Reyes should not have been the person in charge of investigating complaints against Tim Ballard and OUR because he had a conflict of interest. There's a photo. It's probably one of the worst, cringiest photos on the Mormon internet of the past year. It's basically it's basically Sean Reyes in camo with some sort of bulletproof vest with a gold OUR patch sewn to it, and then his Attorney General patch, holding a gun. So he's clearly dog whistling to his MAGA followers. Not that there's anything inherently wrong with being a Republican. I'm a registered Republican in Utah. But that's just a cringy photo of Tim Ballard. 51, OUR began claiming credit on its webpage and blog posts for work that other organizations were performing. That's one of the things that got him in trouble with Ogden. 52, when these organizations started criticizing OUR on social media for its fraudulent hijacking of plaintiffs' organizations' work, OUR and Tim Ballard began attacking them. 53, some of these organizations reached out to the Davis County investigation team based upon their experiences with OURs and Tim Ballard's dishonesty and attacks and what OUR was actually doing. 54, the Davis County's attorney's office issued subpoenas to some of these complainants for them to provide certain documents and testimony related to this investigation of OUR. See Exhibit H. So again, all the stuff's in the exhibits. 55, upon learning of these complaints, Attorney General Reyes would step in, and rather than investigate what OUR and Tim Ballard were doing, he would intimidate the complainants. That's enough, I think, if that's true, to make Tim Ballard need to resign right now as Attorney General of Utah, because he's been claiming that all of these allegations are false, as I understand it. 56, some of these complainants became very nervous, which anxiety was justified as both plaintiff and Troy Rawlings were threatened with a lawsuit by OUR and Tim Ballard, and OUR and Tim Ballard hired a law firm in San Francisco to sue Troy Rawlings. So Tim Ballard and OUR are suing people who are investigating them for legitimate legal reasons. 57, at the same time, others who had made complaints against OUR and Tim Ballard, critically and highly credible witnesses, began withdrawing their complaints based upon fear of retribution by OUR and Tim Ballard, thus impeding Davis County investigation. So that's obstruction of justice, if I'm understanding it right. Accusations against OUR and Tim Ballard, and again against Sean Reyes, if Sean Reyes was involved in that obstruction of justice. 58, the Davis County investigation revealed that OUR and Tim Ballard were aware that allegations were being made that Ballard failed his CIA polygraph test, was on an unpaid intern at the CIA, and was fired from the CIA. So if Ballard claimed to be a former CIA agent, but in reality failed his CIA polygraph test, was only an unpaid intern, and was fired from the CIA, that's not certainly what he was telling people when he was fundraising. I can promise you that. 59, OUR and Tim Ballard were aware that 8 different women had complained to the Davis County investigation that Ballard had engaged in sexual affairs with them. All right, 60, OUR and Tim Ballard were aware that the Davis County attorney believed that Catherine Ballard, that's Tim Ballard's wife, had tampered with witnesses to impede them from cooperation with the Davis County investigation. 61, Troy Rawlings also believed that General Reyes was guilty of witness tampering. That's a big deal, witness tampering, especially when you're freaking Attorney General of the state of Utah, Sean Reyes. Again, if those allegations are true. 62, Rawlings alleged to have written communications from Attorney General Reyes to a witness requesting the witness not to cooperate with Rawlings in the investigation. There's a citation there. 63, OUR went to its de facto general counsel, Sean Reyes, and asked that a special prosecutor be appointed to prosecute Troy Rawlings. So Sean Reyes is de facto general counsel for OUR, which is, which people are filing complaints against to the Attorney General's office in Utah, apparently. And then Sean Reyes is intervening, and and it has this massive conflict of interest, trying to be Attorney General of the state of Utah and fielding complaints again against OUR. Seems super skeezy. 64, Troy Rawlings went to Attorney General Reyes and informed him of OUR's threat to sue him, which General Reyes immediately informed Tim Ballard and OUR of Troy Rawlings' concerns and deemed Mr. Rawlings' statements as false. That seems unethical. 65, even as more fraud complaints came into Attorney Sean Reyes's office, he would immediately send them to Tim Ballard on his personal email instead of his official Utah email. So Sean Reyes, I guess, is receiving information as Attorney General and then going to his private email accounts to leak that information to Tim Ballard and OUR. That seems super skeezy. All right. Super unethical. 66. At this time, Tim Ballard was ignoring his in-house counsel's advice that what he was doing was illegal and unethical and could subject him to criminal liability from the Davis County investigation and the Department of Justice. I'm guessing he didn't heed that warning. 67, Ballard claims, okay, this is big because we've been covering Thom Harrison and Visions of Glory. This is Utah therapist Thom Harrison and the Visions of Glory book, which is sort of like the Utah Mormon prepper apocalyptic guidebook and spiritual guide and almost scripture for apocalyptic end times Mormon preppers, Visions of Glory. So it's saying Ballard claims to be blessed by Thom Harrison. For those who don't know, Thom Harrison is the origins of the Visions of Glory book, where he claims 3 near-death experiences and he's seen Jesus and God, and he's going to live to see the end times. And you know, he claims all other sorts of special powers from these near-death experiences. So 67, Ballard claims to be blessed by Thom Harrison, both while Thom was alive and through Spear President Ken Krogh, claiming to anoint Ballard as a chosen one, not subject to the jurisdiction of government and church authorities. Also, I'm just going to note that we recently did an episode on Avram Gileadi, who was excommunicated, who is the Mormon Church's expert in the book of Revelations. He currently 8 Avram Gileadi books about Revelations in the end of times are being sold at Deseret Book. Avram Gileadi has fully endorsed Visions of Glory as being fully consistent with his interpretation of the book of Isaiah. And also Avram Gileadi incessantly, even as early as the last month or two, teaches about the Davidic servant, the end time servant, someone who's going to be raised up to usher in the second coming of Jesus. Brian David Mitchell, Elizabeth Smart's kidnapper, was influenced by Avram Gileadi, that he was the Davidic servant. That's when he kidnapped Elizabeth Smart. But now it looks like Avram Gileadi and Thom Harrison possibly influenced Tim Ballard to think he was the Davidic end time servant, the one mighty and strong or whatever, and that Tim Ballard was going to be the person that ushers in what? Jesus's, second coming. And by the way, I should note that we've been reported to by someone very close to Thom Harrison that he's currently working for the LDS Church, consulting them about which missionaries, Mormon missionaries with mental illness, should or shouldn't return home early. So that's super disturbing. And again, I'm just referring you to past episodes about Thom Harrison, Visions of Glory, and Avram Gileadi. That's all super significant. 68. Someone in the text is asking if Thom Harrison died. Thom Harrison has not died. So I don't know why 67 says both while Thom was alive. I don't know what that is saying, but I don't think Thom Harrison has died. If he has, that's super disturbing. I hope that's not true. All right. 68. Ballard has been until recently business associates and close friends with the apostle and acting president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, M. Russell Ballard, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or Mormon Church. President Ballard has cited, this is 69, President Ballard has cited Tim Ballard to students at Brigham Young University, Idaho, as an expert of Book of Mormon prophet Nephi and the Mormon view of American history. And there's a photo of Tim Ballard with Glenn Beck and M. Russell Ballard. 70, Tim Ballard has met with President, and I should add, we've shown on Mormon Stories that even though the Mormon Church issued a press release to Vice News claiming that they never supported Tim Ballard Operation Underground Railroad, we were able to find over 200 Deseret News articles promoting Tim Ballard, his books, Operation Underground Railroad, and of course, we were able to find multiple books that Deseret Book was selling of Tim Ballard until they took him down. So that's the Mormon Church definitely lying about their relationship with Tim Ballard and M. Russell Ballard. 70, Tim Ballard has met with President Ballard in the church administration building in Salt Lake City to discuss OUR's work. And again, that's a photo of Glenn Beck and Tim Ballard meeting with M. Russell Ballard at the church administration building. 71, the Davis County investigation, according to OUR's own internal documents, revealed that Elder M. Russell Ballard and other authorities from the Mormon Church provide. This is the big one. I'm going to read this again. I'm slowing down. This is for the shorts. The Davis County investigation, according to OUR's own internal documents, revealed that Elder M. Russell Ballard and other authorities from the Mormon Church provided Mormon tithing records to OUR to help OUR target wealthy Mormon donors and wealthy Mormon church wards. That's dynamite. How are wealthy Mormons going to feel when it's discovered that their personal private tithing information was allegedly leaked to a skeezy nonprofit and nonprofit head to fundraise, in addition to what people already give to the Mormon Church and others. It says 72, Ballard has spoken to many Mormon church groups across the country, including athletic teams at BYU. I think that means Tim Ballard. 73, Tim Ballard has authored at least 3 purported historical books promoting Mormon nationalism that have been published and sold by the Mormon church-owned Deseret News, which were big sellers in the Mormon community and further created the myth of Tim Ballard. So the Mormon Church propped him up and made donors want to donate. Ballard's embellishment with the Mormon Church further provided him credibility and status in Utah, where the Mormon Church is the largest and founding denomination of the state. 75, despite the very public distancing recently of the Mormon Church from Tim Ballard, the Mormon Church continues to promote OUR. This is also disturbing. For example, October 15, 2023, OUR's president, defendant Osborne, gave a fireside on grooming tactics and extortion schemes and other matters in the New Braunfels 2nd Ward in Texas. And there is the announcement, New Braunfels 2nd Ward announcing Matt Osborne is going to talk about grooming tactics and extortion schemes and conversation openers. Like, you can't write this stuff. Like, comedians can't write this stuff. 77, Tim Ballard became friends with Glenn Beck, an American conservative political commentator, radio host, entrepreneur, and television producer. Glenn Beck donated significant amounts of money to begin OUR. 78, Tim Ballard and Glenn Beck formed defendant company Nazarene Fund to fight Christian causes across the globe, and Beck gave Ballard almost unlimited access to the Glenn Beck Media Network, which further contributed to Ballard's credibility. 79, Beck, along with Attorney General Sean Reyes, who should have been looking at arresting and prosecuting Tim Ballard after the sexual assaults and fundraising being thrown upon the citizens of the state of Utah by Tim Ballard. This same Glenn Beck became a fixer for Tim Ballard when the extent of his sexual depravity became known to the Mormon Church. And here's a super disturbing email dated September 16th, 6:31 p.m., so this is about a month and a half ago. It's from Glenn Beck to Tim Ballard. I don't know how this was leaked, but it's said, and it's basically Glenn Beck recruiting Mormon apostle Neil Andersen to collaborate with Tim Beck and Sean Reyes and Tim Ballard to damage control the allegations against Tim Ballard. Sorry, that's just a lot. But here it is. This is Glenn Beck. Tim, I have spoken to Elder Andersen, who is out of the country, Mike Lee a few times, and Sean Reyes today. First, Elder Neil Andersen did not give any information that was new, as he has been out of the country. He said he knew that this was urgent and would be talking to some of the brethren and would get back to me this week. So this is showing Neil A. Andersen, apostle, if I'm getting the right Andersen, is talking to the Quorum of the 12 about the Tim Ballard, Glenn Beck fiasco. So they all knew. If there's any question that they all knew, they all knew. I want to figure out that September 16th date and see how it ties to the Mormon Church's denunciation of Tim Ballard. If any of you who are in the comments can find when the Mormon Church leaked, when the Mormon Church denounced Tim Ballard, what was the date of that, And then what was the excommunication date of Tim Ballard? I talked about that in a previous episode. I don't remember, but I want to match that with the September 16th date of Glenn Beck and Neil Andersen and the Quorum of the 12, all troubleshooting about Tim Ballard. Anyway, Elder Andersen did not have any information that was new as he has been out of the country. He said he knew that this was urgent and would be talking to some of the brethren and would get back to me this week. He indicated that the language of betrayal was disturbing, but he knew very little beyond this. He was very concerned about you as well as the church and promised to get back to me as soon as he heard anything. So I'm guessing this is in response to the church's statement of condemnation against Tim Ballard. We'll keep our reading. He did urge caution for everyone until we knew more from the church authorities. I urged him that the time was of the essence. He understood and said he would do all he could from where he was. Second, I spoke to Mike and Sean, that's Sean Reyes, several times today as well. I feel strongly that we keep our powder dry. I think that means keep quiet until we know exactly what is happening with the church. Any false or inaccurate statements or speculation from anyone on your side, Tim, against any will prove deadly to the cause of justice. I believe you should speak to Sean and Mike about an attorney outside of Utah with no Mormon ties to avoid conflict. So find non-Mormon attorneys, please. And can soft pitch the idea that you are asking for the church to be clear and go through the usual church court process. I don't know what that means. If any of you want to help me interpret that. Yeah, okay. So we're getting thank you for the feedback. Amy Cower-Smith is saying September 15th is the date I found on an article of Tim being denounced. So the article may have come out a day or two previous. Again, the date here is 16. So this is likely a day or two. This this Glenn Beck email to Tim Ballard is probably in response to the Mormon Church's denunciations of Tim as betraying the confidences of M. Russell Ballard. Anyway, there's so much here. Any false or inaccurate statements or speculation on your side, Tim, against, again, any will prove deadly to the cause of justice. So shut up, Tim Ballard, says Glenn Beck. I believe you should speak to Sean Reyes, Attorney General, and Mike about an attorney outside of Utah. I already read this, with no ties. Okay. That is disturbing that you found out about this the same way everyone else did. So apparently Tim Ballard didn't get a heads up about the denouncement. Neither did Glenn Beck. One of the things that you love about our faith is that the Lord's house is a house of order. So you welcome the order to return so you may continue as a saint in good standing, which I currently am. And I would say, if y'all remember, Glenn Beck issued tweets condemning the Mormon Church's condemnation of Tim Ballard before he deleted them. So that's interesting, because this is sort of showing at first Glenn Beck not believing the allegations against Tim. All right. They and you should deny any lies that are being spread. So deny all the lies. I mean, he's saying lies, but be careful here. You don't think it is a coincidence that you have been seriously considering a run for Senate as these accusations come forward. So here's the conspiracy thinking. Clearly, this is all because Tim Ballard's running for Senate and we got to take him down. It's not, no way, because Tim Ballard has been fraudulent. Sean Reyes has obstructed justice, and there are 8 credible allegations of sexual harassment against Tim Ballard. Anyway, it's all lies, and it's because you're running for Senate. Anyway, you pray that you, your family, and the church are protected from secret combinations that wish our faith and our country harm. Again, be careful here. So here it's invoking the Book of Mormon's teachings about secret combinations and saying that legitimate claims of sexual harassment, legitimate claims of obstruction of justice or breaking the law or of fraud aren't legitimate, but instead they're just dubious secret combinations from people inspired by Satan to harm the Mormon Church in the last days. This is Glenn Beck. to Tim Ballard. A soft statement should be made on Monday. So he's saying he's managing his PR. Tim Ballard, make a soft statement on Monday. As we have proof what happened within the church. Whoa, let's see that proof, Glenn Beck. When you have the truth, when Sean has proof of what he needs, Mike has what evidence he needs to prove anything political, I might consider a credible investigator. Then, so he's basically saying hire an investigator, like a private investigator. I don't know. Then and only then should you move forward. All right. This very well may be the first shot across the bow to let all of us know Satan has the unrighteous placed in all high places. So basically, Satan has his agents placed within the Mormon church, within the Utah state government. This is like dubious, creepy, apocalyptic, satanic conspiracy thinking at its highest. We need to be very strategic about any moves from here. We are playing chess now. The days behind us, I fear, will soon feel like we are playing Candyland. So basically, it's going to get violent, is what I'm reading there. I don't know. Again, this is Glenn Beck. You have known the importance of your calling. So Glenn Beck is believing that Tim Ballard is eventually going to be president of the United States and president of the Mormon Church. I don't know. But I think that's referring to the Thom Harrison blessing that maybe Russell Ballard himself gave Tim Ballard a blessing. I don't know. It's very possible and probably likely that Russell Ballard gave Tim Ballard some sort of apostolic blessing. The gates of hell, this is again Glenn Beck, the gates of hell have opened over and over for you, Kathleen, and the family. Know that God loves you and is with you. Let him be your sword and shield. He is not unaware of your plight. If the days in which we live are indeed what we think they are, the Lord will clean out his own house first. So Glenn Beck's basically saying we're in the last days. Jesus is about to come. The apocalypse is about to come. And the Mormon church is corrupt. And that when Jesus comes, he's going to clean out the Mormon church before he cleans out the rest of the world. That's interesting. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth will set us free. I do believe that in most cases, and will be the only thing that will stand the purification. Man, that's scary when they start using words like purification. Let us love all those that hate and persecute us, or who just tell the truth, and use legal means to try and prosecute abusive, fraudulent sexual abusers. I don't know. Glenn Beck, may we all be on our knees for you and your family, as well as those brothers and sisters that are lost in darkness. Glenn Beck. And then he says, if you want something you've never had, you will need to do something you've never done. And that's one quote. And then another quote is, every leader is telling a story about what he or she values in the way they behave. When leaders choose to be positive in the face of intense adversity, the story tends to be widely shared and often repeated. That's Walt Disney. All right. So that's the end of Glenn Beck's damage control email to Tim Ballard, referencing the involvement of Mormon apostle Neil Andersen, in addition to the clear involvement of Russell Ballard. Number 80, since learning of Tim Ballard's implementation of the couple's ruse, that's where Tim Ballard would bring on fake wives to pretend that he was, trying to snuff out child sex traffickers. Glenn Beck called it really bad stuff and feels duped by Ballard. So now Glenn Beck feels duped by Ballard. 81, Tim Ballard also became friends with Tony Robbins, an American author, coach, and speaker who raised staggering amounts of money for Ballard. It goes on to talk about the Sound of Freedom. It says Attorney General Reyes was an associate producer of Sound of Freedom. It also talks about the painter John McNaughton, 85. One Utah artist, John McNaughton, I believe is his name, painted pictures of Ballard and his wife, again, enhancing the credibility of Ballard to an almost Mother Teresa altitude. There's Tim Ballard carrying a child with everyone standing around kneeling. And it's like, I don't know, Abraham Lincoln and Thomas Jefferson kneeling in honor of Tim Ballard. His wife, Catherine, and whoever it is in the front there, I'm guessing that's the actor that played Tim Ballard in Sound of Freedom. you guys can tell me who that person is. Yeah. 86, OUR reported to the IRS 6.9 million in revenue in 2016, 22.3 million in 2019, 45 million in 2020, 53 million in 2021, and 57 million in 2022. That's a lot of money, Mormon Church, Glenn Beck, etc. 87, in the IRS 990 form, it reported that Tim Ballard received a salary of $525,000 in 2022, yet former employees claim that Ballard earned over $14 million through his for-profit companies. And I'm not sure if that's just 1 year or over multiple years, but that's really on the take, Tim Ballard. OUR was making staggering profits for Ballard. As Ballard opened for-profit companies, defendants, which were alter egos of OUR and Ballard, and that allowed Ballard to line his pockets with the widow's mite that the Mormon Church aided and abetted, along with Sean Reyes. 89, in order to find and save trafficked children, Ballard would receive psychic information from psychic defendant Janet Russon about where the ops should occur, along with reassurance and justification of everything Ballard did, while predicting the future situations the operatives would be in so that they could plan the next op. Miss Russon claims that she spoke to a dead prophet named Nephi who directed her about where to locate the trafficked children. And again, we've covered that. Janet Russon's just pulling pages out of Thom Harrison's Visions of Glory book. And, they're all in cahoots here. 90, Ballard used OUR and its ops to fund his personal fantasies of grandeur. Ballard began a program for women accompanying him on ops and called the program the Couple's Ruse. Ballard claims that the Couple's Ruse was an undercover tool to prevent detection by pedophiles when Ballard would not engage in sexual touching of the trafficked women offered up to him in strip clubs and massage parlors across the world. Ballard would choose a woman who worked at OUR or with OUR, or would invite a well-intentioned volunteer to be trained in the Couple's Ruse. The women he chose had no formal training in paramilitary activities or operations, but he knew they were devoted to OUR mission of saving women and children from traffickers. Ballard claimed that he implemented strict rules regarding the Couple's Ruse: no kissing on the lips, no touching or exposing private parts. Ballard soon began abusing the Couple's Ruse and eventually used the ruse as a tool for sexual grooming. As part of either an op or practice for the op, Ballard would often share a bed with a woman posing as his girlfriend and invite her to the shower in his bathroom, even through accommodations at designated safe houses, provided separate bedrooms and bathrooms. Before they were even went undercover together, Ballard insisted that he first needed to ensure that he and his female counterparts in the Couple's Ruse had physical chemistry that would be obvious to those who they would meet during an operation. And I think Ballard would even talk about pheromones, that he had to ramp up the sexual zhuzh between these fake operative women so that their pheromone levels would be high, so that then the bad guys in these ops would detect the pheromones and then believe that this was an actual married couple. Ballard encouraged female operatives to participate in tantric massages before and while on a Couple's Ruse. Those are sexual massages, as I understand it. Ballard claimed to be so concerned about the believability of the Couple's Ruse that he frequently asked women to practice their Couple's Ruse long before a mission ever took place. To that end, Ballard flew women across the country where they would practice their sexual chemistry through tantric yoga, couples massages with escorts, and lap dancing on Ballard's lap. OUR's president, Matt Osborne, and others from OUR also participated in the Couple's Ruse with escorts in a 5-star Mexico City hotel. And now there's a text between Matt Osborne and I'm presuming Tim Ballard, where they're talking about what room they're in, etc. And I guess it's a 5-star hotel. Here's again where Reyes comes in. 103, Attorney General Sean Reyes participated in foreign ops where the Couple's Ruse was being implemented, where he stayed at the same safe house as Ballard and his Ruse girlfriends, and was aware of the Couple's Ruse, which, given that General Reyes is the highest law enforcement officer in Utah, validated that the Couple's Ruse was a legitimate law enforcement tactic. Ballard also frequented strip clubs in the Salt Lake Valley with these women to practice the couple's ruse. Ballard included his son, who was just returned from serving a mission for the Mormon church, to the strip clubs without Ballard's wife's knowledge. That's unfortunate. 106, at the strip clubs, Ballard would pay for and receive lap dances and ingest alcohol and pills at the practice ruses on OUR's dime and with donor monies. All right. And why would you need alcohol and pills and your son to do practice couples ruses in strip clubs with lap dances? 107, Ballard engaged in a ploy where he would tell the women that if they were offered alcohol, which is forbidden by the Mormon church, that she should take the drink and then open mouth kiss him and spit the alcohol into his mouth, and then he would spit it out when the traffickers were not looking. However, Ballard was doing the exact opposite. He was consuming excessive amounts of alcohol, tequila of his own volition, which he drank at strip clubs, massage parlors, and on trips to the point of passing out. For example, he missed a $250,000 speaking engagement a few weeks ago because he was drunk and missed the flight. 109, through the couple's ruses, both in the office and in the field, Ballard eventually engaged in coerced sexual contact with several women and propositioned others. Ballard participated in several sexual acts, with the exception of actual penetration, in various states of undress while on an ops mission. Ballard developed a sexual position where it appeared he was having full-on sexual intercourse with the couple ruse victims while not actually penetrating. While inside private accommodations, when no one else was around that they needed to fool, Ballard would claim that he and his female partner had to maintain the appearance of a romantic relationship at all times in case suspicious traffickers might be surveilling them at any moment. Ballard requested the women he invited to act as his significant other to first have a Brazilian wax. Got to have a Brazilian wax if you're undercover. Ballard would ask each woman, is there anything you wouldn't do to save a child? So that's grooming, manipulative. How far would you go to save a child? Okay. 115, to further convince the women of his need for them on the next ops mission, Ballard would badmouth previous female partners, claiming that the women who had allegedly gone on couples ruses in the past were crazy and claiming that they had fallen in love with him along the way. Poor fools, according to Ballard. Ballard also used these mythical stories to motivate the women in his couple's ruse to prove their mettle and their devotion to the cause by trying to outdo their supposed predecessors. When these women found themselves questioning the legitimacy of tactics involving sexual contact, they often doubted their own instincts, relying on Ballard's breadth of knowledge about rescue missions to convince themselves that such tactics were normal. Other employees of OUR would warn these women not to question Ballard or their lives would be put in danger. Yeah, this is kind of sounding like a cult, basically, a sex cult, which would be on brand in the context that he was operating. 119, Ballard would also tell the women that engage in sex play with him would improve. He would tell them that sex play with him would improve their marriage, even as he also told them not to tell their husbands about what they were doing, or it would compromise the mission, children, their lives, and other informants' lives. Ballard would repeatedly warn these women that if they failed in their couple's ruse mission, they would have wasted the hard-earned money that honest donors had entrusted to OUR or be caught or killed by the cartel. Super manipulative, guilt and shame of women to keep them quiet and to keep them from confessing. Ballard would also tell these women that Janet, Russon, and or Catherine had chosen them to be part of the couple's ruse. So God, through Janet, Russon, and Nephi, approved of the ruse, and so did Tim Ballard's wife, Catherine. Ballard would use spiritual manipulation to coerce them into sexual contact. Almost all the women involved are or were Mormon. Ballard began to claim that President M. Russell Ballard, this is huge, huge. Tim Ballard began to claim that President M. Russell Ballard had given Tim Ballard permission to do the couple's ruse as long as there was no sexual intercourse or kissing on the lips, and had given him a special priesthood blessing as such. So that's probably the blessing that Glenn Beck was referencing in the email that indeed M. Russell Ballard is reported to have given an apostolic blessing as a Mormon prophet, seer, and revelator, and special witness of Christ to Tim Ballard to approve the couple's ruse. Unbelievable. 125, our management adopted and accepted the couple's ruse as a standard policy and procedure of the company and allowed Ballard unrestrained allowance on how he enacted the couple's ruse. Ballard would also claim that a passage from the Book of Mormon in which a man kills another man, that's Laban in the first 3 chapters of the Book of Mormon. When Laban kills another man on the promptings of the Holy Spirit, that demonstrates that sometimes the Holy Spirit asks people to perform unconventional tasks. If you want to learn more about Joseph Smith doing something very similar, look up the Happiness Letter on Mormon Stories, LDS Discussion Series, or elsewhere, where Joseph Smith tries to convince Sidney Rigdon's daughter, Nancy, I believe, that sometimes what's unethical in one situation is ethical in another when God commands it. Super dishonest, creepy Joseph Smith predatory vibes there. 127, Ballard would also claim to the women that defendants Janet Russon told him that he had been married to them in a previous life, and so their conduct was appropriate. This is now invoking Visions of Glory, Tim Ballard, Chad Daybell, Lori Vallow, Mormon theological creepiness, and it just shows Tim Ballard was mixed up in all of that prepper, apocalyptic, Visions of Glory, Thom Harrison, spiritual wifery, mumbo jumbo. And it's been reported to me that Avram Gileadi as well, the man whose 8 books are sold at Deseret Book currently, Avram Gileadi's ex-wife claims that when he was excommunicated in 93, part of the reasons why was for his involvement in spiritual wifery. It's also been reported to me that Thom Harrison, the origins of the Visions of Glory book, has told some of his therapeutic clients that they are spiritual wives of his as well. So the spiritual wifery stuff, see Carolyn Pearson's book on the eternal ghost of polygamy. Just this polygamy garbage continues to haunt the Mormon church, and it's still Mormon doctrine in Doctrine and Covenants, section 132. Read it. It's there. This is too much. All right. So yeah. Spiritual wifery. 128. Additionally, Ballard would get ketamine treatments and have a scribe come in with him while he would talk to the dead prophet Nephi and issue forth prophecies about Ballard's greatness and future as a United States Senator, President of the United States, and ultimately the Mormon prophet to usher in the second coming of Jesus Christ. Again, Thom Harrison, Visions of Glory, Avram Gileadi, weird, creepy, channeling dead people stuff. And again, Thom Harrison was called as a bishop after the Mormon church found out he had written Visions of Glory. And apparently he's continuing to consult the Mormon church. And Avram Gileadi's books, 8 of them are sold right now at Deseret Book, last time I checked. And that's all apocalyptic, second coming, Mormon prepper, doomsday stuff that Deseret Book is promoting through Avram Gileadi and Tim Ballard and through their support of Thom Harrison. All right, let's keep going. 129, Ballard would also claim to his female ruse partners that if his wife Catherine were to die, he would immediately marry them. That's creepy spiritual wifery. Ballard told one of his victims that when his wife would question what Ballard was doing with these women, Ballard would tell his wife that his female partners kept falling in love with him and wanted to kill Catherine so they could be together. That's, again, scary. Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, kill your spouse if you feel sexual feelings for someone and call it divine inspiration. That's scary. 131, Ballard would insist that the women stay silent about their alleged sexual encounters with him because if they told anyone, it would put everyone at risk. It would compromise the children, and because he was blessed by President Ballard to be a future president of the United States and the prophet of the church. So this is a big deal. Another big deal. It's claiming that President M. Russell Ballard blessed Tim Ballard to be a future president of the United States and then a prophet of the Mormon church. That's what Glenn Beck was referring to in his previous email. This is dynamite, explosive news. After the women were coerced into engaging in sexual activity with Ballard, he used their encounters to his advantage, sending texts to some of the women that they would say something to the effect of, "We will have so much in the afterlife, we will be deterred into silence on all things forever. We will have so much shit on each other. We will be deterred into silence on all things forever. So again, it's coercion into silence about talking about sexual things. Ballard gave the women burner phones to use and had them use Signal, a messaging app that keeps communications private, and he frequently demanded that the women erase the digital traces of the conversations with them each night, so that's destroyed the message. Ballard also threatened the women that he was tracking them with their burner phones and company phones he provided. That's scary stalking stuff. Additionally, he required women he asked to go on ops as part of the couple's ruse to sign non-disclosure agreements, claiming it was required to protect the safety of the children and the participants. Ballard would then threaten to sue the women if they disclosed anything about his tactics, practice, ops, or the couple's ruse. At least 2 marriages have broken up as a result of Tim Ballard's actions. Ballard offered to pay for the divorce attorney of one of his victims, and he had a henchman call and threaten her husband on voice message, resulting in the police being called in an investigation. Finally, in the spring of 2023, some of the female employees of OUR who had been on the couple's ruse ops or practices came forward to OUR management. And then it goes on to say that Holland and Hart conducted an external investigation, that OUR terminated Tim Ballard, that OUR's board of directors opposed the firing and came to Ballard's aid, and that a joint plan was hatched where OUR and Ballard would resign because of the conflict of interest between Sound of Freedom and OUR, so he can continue to raise money. So that's a total fraudulent scam between the OUR execs and Tim Ballard to make a fake PR scheme to hide the real reason why he was terminated, which was the sexual harassment claims. As a part of the plan, everyone had to sign an NDA. Ballard went on to start the Spear Fund to be his next nonprofit scam. That's me, not the complaint. 146, OUR remained silent, using his face and worldwide opening tour of Sound of Freedom to raise money and allowing Ballard to continue his grooming, drinking, and sexual deviancy, all on the donors' dimes. Rather than turn Ballard into the police for his criminal conduct, OUR paid Ballard $618,000 and gave him a Jeep Grand Cherokee to resign from OUR. So they paid him off to resign. Upon belief and suspicion, Ballard was given full discretion to the content of his resignation letter, was given editorial discretion over OUR's statements about his departure, a consulting agreement to continue working with OUR by paying money from OUR to Liberty and Light, and giving Ballard control over who the new CEO of OUR would be. So basically, OUR would continue to be a puppet organization that Ballard would control from the outside. Disturbing. Finally, some OUR needs to go down if this is true. Finally, some of the victims of Ballard's sexual exploits are boldly coming forward and are filing this action for their damages, holding the defendants responsible for their outrageous behaviors, to punish the defendants for their actions, to try to prevent them from acting in this fashion again, and to bring light to who and what Tim Ballard is, so that the humble, very well-intentioned donors across the world can decide with eyes wide open whether to donate to Ballard and his organizations. It's not done. It's almost done. After the initial filing of the lawsuit, OUR did not step up and accept accountability for its actions that allowed Ballard to grow as a sexual monster, but rather issued a press release targeting the only female lawyer on the legal team that represents the plaintiffs, and without disclosing to the public its behind-the-scenes damage control measures, nor publicly denying any of these specific allegations. Upon reasonable belief and inquiry, upon learning of the couple's ruse and how Ballard used it, then the Mormon Church excommunicated Tim Ballard. I wonder what their evidence is there, because that evidence has not been released. Finally, the defendants, including and especially Tim Ballard, engaged in a fraud in order to engage in sexual relations with the plaintiffs, the fact of which are specifically set forth in each of the plaintiff statements that are attached as appendices. So that's it. That's all I have time for today. That is this complaint. If this is true, I don't know how Sean Reyes shouldn't resign and be charged and tried. Tim Ballard should be charged and tried for crimes. The board members of OUR should be charged and tried. And the Mormon Church should be exposed, the Mormon Church's involvement, both Neil A. Andersen and M. Russell Ballard, with the collaborations, the empowerment, and the cover-up, and Thom Harrison and Avram Gileadi and all the preppers that were involved in encouraging this mentality of demons and second coming and the end times Davidic servant and the second coming of Jesus and all the prepper garbage. All of these people need to be brought to justice if all these things are true. If you appreciate this content, please continue supporting us. Go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a donor. Thanks for the super chats that are just now coming in. Seth Doddridge writes, part of me is laughing at how ridiculous this whole Tim Ballard situation is. At the same time, I am sorry for all the victims. I too am super sorry for all the victims. So again, this is super disturbing. We will be covering more of this in the days and the weeks ahead. Thanks to the attorneys who are making this available. Thanks to the courageous victims and all the whistleblowers that have made this possible. Thanks to Lynn Packer, who's the journalist that continued doggedly to go after Tim Ballard. Thanks to Anna and Tim of Vice News for their coverage of this. Thanks to all the courageous whistleblowers and people who have helped provide evidence and information. Now I just hope that the lawmakers in Utah will make the right decision. The Governor Cox needs to get rid of Sean Reyes if this is true and clean up the Attorney General's office. If, as I understand it, if Sean Reyes is kicked out of the Attorney General's office, that will be 3, as I understand it, consecutive Utah Attorney Generals who were convicted or had scandals in their administrations. So Governor Cox, can you clean up the Utah Attorney General's office? And again, at the end of the day, this is the mess of the Mormon Church for supporting Avram Gileadi and his books on Isaiah, for supporting Thom Harrison and which allowed the Visions of Glory book to be sold, for not clamping down on Avram Gileadi and Thom Harrison and the Sound of and the Visions of Glory book when they could have, for not clamping down on prepper apocalyptic Mormon fundamentalism, for not excommunicating and shutting the apocalyptic Mormon prepper movement down for the decade or more that it was allowed to flourish. And then recently for M. Russell Ballard's empowerment and Deseret Book's empowerment and the Mormon Church's empowerment of Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad through selling his books, through promoting him in Deseret Book and through Deseret News articles, and then the lying of the Mormon Church, claiming that the Mormon Church and M. Russell Ballard never promoted Tim Ballard at all. And don't forget Glenn Beck. Like, lots of accountability here. We're going to be covering this in the days, weeks, and months ahead. Thanks to everyone who makes this possible. Thanks to Lauren Matthias and John Matthias at Hidden True Crime, along with Megan Connor and Mindy Caldwell, and everyone at OSF who makes all this possible. Please email me at mormonstories@gmail.com if you have more evidence or information. Thanks again for supporting Mormon Stories and the Open Stories Foundation. And be good to each other, be kind to each other. This is a doozy. Thanks to Gerardo that makes all this possible, along with our board and Maven and Julia and Brooklyn and everyone at the Open Stories Foundation. Love you guys. Take care. And we'll see you all again soon. And let the truth get out there and let justice be done. See ya.